Hello guys, welcome back to the channel, and I wanted to report this as soon as it came out and get my thoughts, but I wasn't able to right away. I was working on a video at the time as I'm doing collaborations with people because I'm starting a series on the channel, and that video will either come out just after this, or if not, that will definitely come out tomorrow, but I think I will be shooting for it after this, so make sure to stay tuned and make sure to check out previous videos if you are new to the channel, of course. But guys, we all kind of knew this was going to happen from what first came out yesterday. I saw on Twitter yesterday that Chicago was preparing to make an announcement. Obviously, if they're making an announcement, it's going to be a rebuild, and it was exactly that. The Chicago Blackhawks, the team that really has had one of the best dynasties over these past 2 decades, is going into a full rebuild. And there are a lot of question marks to be had when it comes to this roster. What's going to happen with it going forward? So make sure to stay until the end of this video to find out all the deets and my thoughts regarding the Chicago Blackhawks team and what the future holds for their 2 stars in Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. But without further ado, let's get right into it, guys. When it comes to Jonathan Toews and Patty Kane, we all know they are the face of the franchise for the Chicago Blackhawks. Patty Kane on the wall behind me. How do you not love these guys? They have been electric, some of the best players in the entire NHL for so long. They won 3 Stanley Cups in 6 years with the Chicago Blackhawks in amazing fashion. And now that the Blackhawks have really reached a point with Stan Bowman making some very questionable deals, to the point where even Jonathan Toews, who I touched on this in my previous video, so make sure to check it out if you're interested. But Jonathan Toews even came out and talked to the media recently after that Brandon Saad trade to the Colorado Avalanche for Nikita Zadorov, how he didn't get any notice from Stan Bowman management that they were going into full rebuild. He didn't know anything about this. And while, yes, management doesn't need to necessarily let their players know what they're doing or trades that they're doing, I do understand Toews' reasoning for his disgruntlement with really being a guy who's a competitor. Obviously, Toews, the longtime captain for the Blackhawks. Same thing with the other veterans in this club, not really knowing what the future holds and scratching their heads and losing a key guy in Saad for a deal that really, Zadorov is not a bad player by any means, but Saad is the better player. So take these things into account. Losing Corey Crawford, the longtime goaltender that helped them win a bunch of these Stanley Cups over this past decade for the Blackhawks, has been crucial for them at times, even with all the injuries that he's dealt with. He was huge in this year's playoffs as well, Crawford. Losing him and Robin Lehner back at the trade deadline, it leaves a lot of the players wondering whether it's Kane or whether it's other guys in this lineup. With Duncan Keith, for example, I'd say Seabrook, but he's been out with injury. But nonetheless, they've all been voicing, for the most part, their disgruntlement with management when not addressing things, and now they finally are saying that, yes, we are going into a rebuild. So the question is, what is next for these 2 guys especially? Now, Duncan Keith, I think it'll be a stretch to see him dealt. He's 37 years old. He still has a cap at 5.5 mil for another 3 years at least. But nonetheless, Kane and Toews are so interesting here. They both have a cap at 10.5 mil. We know this. They signed that contract, I believe, back in 2014 when the salary cap was just around 69 mil. And at the time, that was a huge contract, and it still is now. But both of them make 10.5 mil for an additional 3 years. So could we see one or both of these studs from Chicago shipped out? I think it really is all up to these players at the end of the day, because they both, I do believe that they have no trade or no movement clauses, though. If I am wrong, let me know in the comments below, of course. But if that is the case especially, then they really do have a say as to where they're going to be dealt, and if at all. And these are 2 guys, they're huge competitors. Kane last season had another remarkable year, over 80 points, including 33 goals and 51 assists for 84 total points. The year prior, back in the 2018-2019 season, Kane had 110 points. He's still killing it, even in his 30s now. And Jonathan Toews had a strong season for the Blackhawks as well, had 60 points on the season, including 18 goals and 42 assists, and had 81 points the year prior. And before that, he was really looming around between 50 and 60 points. So he's kind of been up and down over these past couple years, Toews, but nonetheless, he stepped up big in times for the Blackhawks, and definitely in playoffs. He really stood out and helped them get past that qualifying round in the Edmonton Oilers. But nonetheless, this Chicago Blackhawks team, they have these veteran guys. They have lost plenty. They have been selling off plenty for really this past decade because, in part, these huge contracts that Stan Bowman has been dealing with. It's not an easy task to deal with a cap hit of over 20 mil just with 2 players alone on your roster. So now we're in a situation where we look at the Brandon Saad trades. When he was first traded, the Hawks really lost that trade, and Isimov coming the other way. But Saad had his best years of Columbus. Then Saad gets traded back to Chicago for Artemi Panarin for the most part. We all knew what happened there, and that was definitely in part because the Blackhawks couldn't afford Panarin long term. And now Saad gets traded again, and the Hawks lose each and each and every trade, in my opinion. I think we can all agree on that regardless of who you're a fan of. So there's a lot of issues going on with management at Stan Bowman, and now that they're in a rebuild, I personally, as a fan of hockey, a fan of the Blackhawks, even though they're not my favorite team, I don't feel comfortable with Stan Bowman leading them into the direction of a rebuild. I think if the Blackhawks ownership is smart at all, they will relieve their duties of Stan Bowman and bring in a guy who's more capable and has a better resume, per se, of a rebuilding type team. So a lot is going to change with this lineup, I assure you. They made plenty of moves already. Losing Robin Lehner was huge, and Corey Crawford, knowing that they're going to just bank with Malcolm Subban and the other Delia and other goaltenders that they currently have. But when it comes to back to Kane and Toews, what is going to happen with them? Because they really do hold some cards here as to if they want to be dealt. And it is similar to a situation, to an extent, if you will, with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin, especially if the Pens do get a rebuild over these next couple of years. The rumors are always that if any player is, say, going to leave or be dealt, it will be Evgeny Malkin, not Sidney Crosby. And the same argument could possibly be had with the Chicago Blackhawks in saying that it will be Patrick Kane and not Jonathan Toews, per se, the captain. So it is things to consider, but I will say this. Am I banking on both players or either of them to be traded? No. But do I think it is a sure possibility? A realistic possibility? Yes. If you're doing a full rebuild, which is not an easy task to do as a Rangers fan, I'm very grateful for how the Rangers have approached and lucked out in certain aspects with the lottery, for instance, regarding their rebuild. But it's still no easy task, and these things take time. Whether it's 4 or 5 years or whether it's beyond that, it still takes a while. Luckily for the Blackhawks, however, they have a lot of great young core pieces in this lineup, hopefully that stay there. DeBrincat, I love. Strome, if they keep him, because I do believe he is an RFA as of right now, Dylan Strome. And then you have Adam Boquist on the way as the next big thing on defense for them. And before you know it, they have a lot of pieces in that lineup, and Dominic Kubalik, who they just extended. So they do have some nice pieces there, but it's a matter of, would they be able to keep Toews and Kane throughout this rebuild? I'm not sure if they would. And it leaves you wondering, could possibly Kane be dealt, and how would he be dealt? I feel the Blackhawks would probably have to retain close to, if not 50% of either contract that they trade, but there is no doubting that if they say do in fact trade Patrick Kane, they're going to get an absolute haul for him. Even with Kane being into close to his mid-30s now, he still puts up the points. He's a remarkable player in the AHL. He's one of the best offensive wingers there is in the game and has been throughout the entirety of his career. Imagine Patrick Kane back in Buffalo, where things all started, his hometown. Personally, as a hockey fan, I would love that. I think that would be great for the Buffalo Sabres that are trying to compete for playoffs now. They made some strong moves. Brandon Taylor Hall was huge, possibly alongside Jack Eichel, bringing in Eric Stahl, among others. It's not an easy task to happen, but Buffalo could make those assets be relevant to, say, the Chicago Blackhawks, should they wish to go down that avenue. Not saying it's going to happen, but these are things to consider. Patty Kane, I think, does have a possible chance of being traded. It would take a haul, and the Blackhawks probably would have to retain cap, given that this is a flat cap era that we are currently dealing with. But nonetheless, when players like these come available, if available at all, which I do think that they will, at least one of the two between Toews and Kane, let's look at the Vegas Golden Knights for a second. As they've stated, when a player becomes available that they know is surely one that doesn't come around every so often, you have to go all in on them when you are in a win now stage. Look at what they did with bringing in Pietrangelo now. They were even looking at Taylor Hall if they could free up more cap space. They ended up not going down that route, either because they couldn't get Hall on a lower cap hit, or just didn't have enough interest per se, but they were exploring that possibility. So Vegas is one team where we know that they, in a win now stage, will truly go all in to land a player either via free agency that they know does not come around often, or via trade. So take that into account. Same thing can be said when Mark Stone, when he was available, and Max Pacioretty. So the fact that Vegas is so willing to make these leads me to believe that other teams in the AHL that are in a win now stage might be under similar thought. And yes, it will probably hurt them down the road with not having as much assets or having a balance of youth in the lineup once these contracts definitely still start to look bad. But nonetheless, for teams in a win now stage, you can't tell me they wouldn't be interested in Jonathan Toews. One of the best, if not the best captain in the entire NHL, has been a leader for so long for the Chicago Blackhawks, and would bring so much experience and just great play overall. Even with him declining somewhat in his play, Jonathan Toews can still put up the points, no doubting. He's one of the best two-way forwards in the entire NHL, and he stepped up big in this year's qualifying round in playoffs, which goes to show that he can still get it done. And Patrick Kane, similar story. He puts up the points. Kane can still easily, in my mind, continue to put up anywhere between 80 and 90 plus points throughout his NHL career, or for the remainder of his contract. That's how good and consistent Kane has been all the way through since he was first drafted all those years ago. But nonetheless, if Kane is dealt or Toews, it would be crazy. I would love to see it just for the sake of really changing things up, seeing a different direction in the NHL. I'm not trying to upset Blackhawks fans by any means because they are two huge pieces, core pieces of them. But at the end of the day, their cap hits have been such a detrimental part to the Blackhawks' lack of success over these past couple years, really since their last cup run. And because they gave them those extensions after they won the cup, that is really what's hurting them most, you know? Same can be said with other teams, even including my Rangers, for instance, after they have given their players extensions, after they've, say, hit their primes, for instance, or had a deep playoff run, whatever it may be. But nonetheless, the Blackhawks are in a very interesting scenario. They're going to make plenty of moves. They don't have necessarily as many chips to deal outside of Kane and Toews. So that leaves you wondering, could they really commit to losing their top guys who have been their leaders in the locker room for so long now, over a decade? I think it is a possibility, and I do think that they will explore it. And I do think there's a solid chance one of these two players will wish to be traded. Maybe even Toews, given his disgruntlement. If he's willing to stay with the team to in this rebuild, then that's one thing. But these are two players that are still hungry to win. They know that they are still capable of being on a team to win. So do they want to spend basically the remainder of their contract and possibly the remainder of their careers with Chicago and a team that is surely not going to be contending for a Stanley Cup anytime soon? That's the biggest what if, and that is the reasoning as to why we could see one or both or more of these players dealt out of the Chicago core group that is getting thinner and thinner by the year. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, guys. What do you think is going to happen with this Blackhawks team going forward? Do you think Kane, Toews, both of them, none of them are going to be dealt? I would love to hear your thoughts. As always, guys, it means a ton. And if you haven't checked out previous videos, make sure you do, especially my one yesterday regarding the 5 biggest winners and losers in this year's offseason thus far. That was a lot of fun. Make sure to check it out if you are, of course, interested. And if you like this kind of hockey content, hit that like and subscribe button. As always, it means a ton, guys. And also, I did start a contest on the channel, so make sure to check that out in the description down below. Whoever ends up designing a possible logo for the channel, for this channel, you have to know graphic design, obviously, and you email it to me. I'll be having this go on for 2 weeks, depending on how many entries I get, and whoever's logo is chosen as the next design for this channel, I will be sending them a $25 Visa gift card. So there is some incentive there. So if any of you guys are interested in exploring that possibility, make sure to check out the description down below and do everything you got to do to make it happen. But thank you all so much, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Toews, Kane, could we see them out of Chicago? Or do we think that they're going to stay here for the entirety of the rebuild? I think that is pretty far-fetched to say, at least at this point in time. But let me know your thoughts, guys. Check out my next video. That will probably be up right after this, and I'll be back real soon.